Hey, welcome back to Rebel Movement Podcast. My name is Billy. My pronouns are they, them, or she, her, and I'm glad you're here. Today I want to talk about a subject that is pretty taboo. I would say it is one that I've talked about before. Um, and I will just say it's not an easy one. I'm going to put a little trigger warning just in case here at the beginning that I might be discussing some difficult themes. Um, And if you're feeling particularly, I don't know, like sensitive today or emotional, if you're like on your way to a, I don't know, job interview or work, and you know that you kind of get triggered or tear up at emotional things, you may decide to watch this or listen to this another week before or another day. And before we get to that point, I'll just give a couple little updates. The first one is that we went camping. I think I said in my previous episode. Um, it was not, it wasn't the smoothest camping trip. We'll say that. We usually go to a place up north that's like 5 hour drive away. The last like 45 minutes usually is a logging road, like an old logging road. So it's all gravel. Um, we've gone many other times before. I've probably mentioned it in previous years. Um, we ended up leaving later than planned or later than we had wanted to. Um, so by the time we were driving, we're kind of like racing the sunset. And usually we stop a few times on the way, but this time we didn't really have the time to, unfortunately. Um, when we got there, the logging road or the last part of this drive, the logging road is like the worst condition it has ever been. Um, I don't know if you've ever been on a road like a gravel road that like a grader has to go by. And when I don't know if it's the grader, if they're going too fast or hit a bump or something, then um whatever the grading part is, like bumps the ground a bunch, and then you drive on it and the car's like da 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 and it shakes. Maybe you can imagine it now. It was like that. It was so bad that there was times where like the car was shaking so much you could just like stop, and it took us an hour and a half to get there to the like to go down this road. So like double the amount of time it usually takes. We got there and we actually had the different like the wrong site. Like we had booked a site that's different than our favorite one and forgotten or misread it or something. And it was still a nice site, but it just wasn't like we drive out there to go for a reason. We like the fact that there's no service and really in the wood, like really far into the woods, obviously. It's like quite a while into Algonquin, northern Algonquin. Um, and we get to stay on this beach, like a sand beach, and you get to like just basically walk in the water. But this time it was like a little forest site. It did have a little water access, but you had to walk down a bunch. There was like, kind of covered by trees and shrubs, and there was tons of rocks on it and some clams and um hurt my foot a little bit walking down it. Or no, I hurt my foot because my hip fell asleep at one point and I slipped on the rocks and I slammed my foot against the ground. Anyway, it was raining like most of the time. It was we had to sleep on the ground for like a night and a half, um, which is not comfortable, especially when you're on a tilt. Anyway, it honestly, looking back, I'm sure one day it's going to be hilarious. It's like a good trip for this for a for a story, but it wasn't the most relaxing. But we did end up like going for a hike when we got back and like did some other cool stuff. There's actually a place we went for a hike there, like close to there on the way back, and then we went for a hike near here being home the next day. And there's the hike up in Brent is a crater hike, and we went down the Portage Trail, which is pretty cool. And there's pitcher plants all around where the like lake access point is. It's really cool. So good stuff, bad stuff. Um, which really is like, I don't know. I'm kind of just telling you for fun, but also I just feel like it's I don't know. Sometimes I get back and I'm like, wow, this is an amazing camping trip. Everything was fantastic. And sometimes it's like everything goes wrong and you're like, huh, well, That sucks. I also forgot a bunch of stuff, but anyway. Um, I'll also just give you a little reminder that on September 20th, I'm doing my very first teacher workshop, any kind of movement teacher. If you work with bodies in general or people in general, um, this is a workshop that will be helpful for you, particularly if you work with bodies, if you're like massage therapist or um, photographer, that kind of thing. It's called anti-diet teaching, and essentially we're going over like what diet culture is, where it comes from, how it affects you and your students, and how to teach in a more accessible way. And if you are a person who is a non-movement teacher, just let me know so I can, if if we're talking about like teaching a yoga class in an anti-diet way, then we can also give examples for like, I don't know, helping your photography clients move in a non-diet way. You know what I mean? Um, there's payment plans, there's sliding scale options, and it's $200 Canadian as the regular price, but you can also pay that in 4 installments of $50 Canadian. I think with both of those, there's like a little uh, fee, like a 5% fee. But if you do the payment plan, it's the same price as the all at once price, which I think is important. Otherwise, there are spaces in my all in one-on-one for one-on-one clients as well as group clients. Rebel Movement Club is my group if you're wanting to join a diet culture free movement space that you can just like practice in your pajamas anytime you want to. Um, join the Rebel Movement Club if you're wanting one-on-one attention for either like leaving diet culture or you're wanting to figure out like where your back pain is coming from. So you want to do movement particularly for that, or you have a job that, is like sitting at a desk all day and you just really kind of want to care for yourself now so that you can feel good in your body for longer. Awesome space to do a lot of that practicing together in a space that is a safer space. So I'm queer. I do my very best to be a queer inclusive teacher, diet culture free area. And I'm always, one of my main values, which I talked about in my episode last week, is to try to always learn to do better, and do better, not just talk about doing better. Because I think that walking the walk is way more important than talking the talk. All right. I'm not going to lie to you. I did not want to record today. I didn't want to show up in part because, well, we'll find out in a minute. This time of year is a difficult one for me. Um, these couple days particularly. And I'm just like emotionally, I'm not in a great, I'm fine. I will say I'm safe. I'm fine. I have lots of tools. I have an amazing therapist. Um, but I'm like feeling feelings. I'm feeling my feelings. I'm in a lot of grief and a lot of rage and a lot of different, just all sorts of different feelings, honestly. And I did not want to do anything. I didn't want to show up today. And I think, I mean, part of that is because I know this is just kind of hard to talk about and hard to, like, it's a difficult subject, but also because that the whole, I don't know, there's this, how do I say this without sounding pretentious? Basically, there's kind of a shaming thing around showing up when you're not super happy. And I think this is changing, but like posting, like posting highlight reels on Instagram, only posting when you're in good moods and only doing stuff when you're in good moods. And then there's this sort of like, which is all maybe all fake. And there's this idea that you can't be of value if you're not happy all the time. Um, and it kind of misrepresents like being a human with feelings in general. And as a person with trauma, I've talked about this before, as a person with trauma and mental health, mental illness stuff, I felt a lot growing up like those things meant that I could not be successful. I could not show up. And there's a lot of taboo shit around all three of those areas: mental health, mental illness, and trauma. And it shouldn't be taboo because we should not feel like they make us like they are mean that we are mistakes. Um, anyway, I'm feeling myself wanting to go on a tangent there, but I feel like it's not going to make super a lot of sense. So I'm pulling it back. Essentially, it's important to me to be authentic with you and to show you that I do have difficult days. I do have difficult times. I've been through, things that mean that certain days of the year might feel a little bit emotional. And I know that I'm not alone with these things. And I think it can have a lot of great value to talk about them. All right. So what I want to talk about today is being estranged from my immediate family and um which is also me cutting ties with my emotional abusers. I do want to name that despite the fact that it's been 7 years, I still get nervous to talk about it sometimes. Um, Particularly on a new platform or in front of a different audience. Um, it's always been hard to talk about since the beginning, 7 years ago, because there's part of it, the situation is that I'm kind of scared for my own safety, and I'm scared for other people's opinions because I had to be afraid of other people's opinions in order to grow up, and be safe in my space. I had to care far too much about what people thought of me, and that's now a thing that I'm trying to work through. But anyway, I just want to name that I'm not like I'm comfortable to talk about this. I'm not talking about it with you in a sense that I'm processing it. It's all been processed or in the process of being processed with my therapist. I'm not here to trauma dump on you. I'm not here to um tell you how all of these stories go. And I'm not here to name names or to tell anyone to choose sides or anything like that. I'm just talking about my own experience. Um what I've been through, my feelings, and my perspective. It's not the only perspective in the world, right? Um, but this is my story. And that's one thing that I want to touch on first is how do I say this? One thing that I've had this come up with clients before and friends before where something someone treated them badly and then they don't talk about it because they're afraid to paint this person that hurt them in a bad light. Even though it's their experience, their feelings, something that's important, it's helpful to talk about it because then you can heal from it and maybe raise awareness or whatever, depending on the situation. Um, it feels bad to talk about. It's hard to talk about, but then you're afraid of painting them in the bad light and you're afraid of what other people might think of you in your being open about the situation. You following me so far? The thing that I've tell them, which somebody told me once, is if that person that hurt you didn't want to play that character in your story, they shouldn't have. Wait, no, oh, I messed that up. I mean, damn, it would have been powerful if I'd actually said that the right way. If the person that hurt you didn't want to be um mentioned in your story the way that you're mentioning them, they shouldn't have played that character in your story. See, now I'm getting all messed up, but you get the idea. I'm just gonna let go of the fact that let go of me wanting it to be perfect and just kind of throw that out there in the messy form that it is. Um, there's the difference between gossiping, making up shit, and like shit talking people for shit talking people and you telling your story, right? Like if you were going, I'm just going to pretend that you've been through a similar situation, like whether it's like you had a friend who was really awful to you and you're, a little nervous to talk about it, or a boss who was rude to you or whatever. Like I feel like a lot of you relate to this part of it. Um, there's a difference between you going around to like, let's use the boss example. There's a difference between you going around to like all of your coworkers and every single of your work's competitor places and news play, like, I don't know, like just going around and being like, oh my God, you'll never fucking guess what my boss just did. They did this, and you like exaggerate it and you like make it up. And like the intention behind you doing that isn't, I don't know. It might just be that you're like wanting the gossiping or you want the drama or whatever. There's a difference between that and you just being honest about your story on your platform or to a friend or in your book if you're writing an autobiography or whatever. There's a difference between that. And you don't have to omit a part of your story, a part of your experience because of the other person. Like, I totally get that. I've experienced it and I've been through it for years where you don't talk about the bad shit that someone's doing to you because oh, you want other people to think they're bad because oh, they're really good. They're really capable of good things, or oh, they're having a hard time. They've had difficult stuff and they're just having a hard time right now. I understand all those arguments. I have used them all myself. Um, it's your story, your perspectives. And if you're communicating it with the intention of just being honest about your story rather than the intention of shit talking them, it's going to be communicated differently. You know what I mean? Um, so I just want to say that part because it's something that's come up with people that I know a lot, and it's something that I went through too. And I guess I'm communicating this more so for survivors or other people who are trying to go through this of like, I know the hesitation to talk about your story. I totally get it. And I know that's because your heart is so fucking big that you see the good in that person. You see the good things they do. You see their like wonderful traits and you see the like glint in their eye when they're doing something they love or the moments of kindness. You want them to be supported. You want them to be loved. You want them to be happy. But you can't keep making yourself small to make them comfortable. You can't keep crossing out parts of your story so that their story will look better, appear better, so that their character will appear better. You can't keep ignoring all of your feelings and your safety and your boundaries because of them. Because I know that it's the temptation is that, like, oh, maybe they'll get better, maybe they'll get better, maybe they'll get better. If they haven't, they might not ever. I'm so sorry. But you deserve to be safe right now. Whether or not they've had a shit life, or they've had a bad day, or they've had, I don't know, all of the bad days for every single day of their life, you deserve to be safe. Those two things can exist at the same time. And if they can't do that, if they can't even hear your feelings or acknowledge your safety or hear your boundaries or hear your um emotions or fuck, even recognize that you're a human being, fuck them. I know that's a kind of a harsh way to say it at the end. You can set those boundaries now. You can talk about it now. You deserve better than that. So maybe you've gotten the impression so far that it's complicated. I hope so, because it is. Um, I'm specifically speaking in my story and my perspective with this about um, emotionally abusive um, situations or situations with toxic people who are emotionally immature. There's many ways of putting it. Um, if you are someone who is really close to me and you know some of these people and you're already feeling some, I don't know, feelings come up, I would just say maybe like take it one bit at a time, maybe pause for now. If you happen to be one of the people who I'm alluding to listening to this podcast, I highly doubt you're listening, but just in case you are, I need you to know that I'm speaking my story and I'm speaking my truth, that this truth has been here all along. It just took me forever to see it. It took me falling apart to even realize that things weren't right, and um that we had a chance to chat about it. We had a chance to work through it. Um but not one that was a safe one. Um and really, like, just block me if you'd rather not listen, because I'm not going to mince my words for anyone anymore. I'm second guessing taking that part out because, anyway, we'll see what I do. This shit's just hard to talk about. So here's a couple of things that I wish people knew about estrangement, or standing up against abuse, this kind of situation. Um, I never had an evil plot. I was accused of it a few times. I've never had this evil plan. It was around this time of year, right? This was like today when I'm recording this, so beginning of September when it happened, when it all started to fall apart. And I was accused of having a plot for the whole summer, because it's who I'm referring to, a sibling and a parent. And things had felt closer with this parent. And um, I did not have a plot at all. It wasn't a scheme. It just, I honestly felt like, I don't know. It took me a whole year. It took me, I like, you know what? Fuck it. We're going to go back to the beginning a little bit. Don't worry. It's not going to be like a whole long story, but I'm just going to give you like the better answer to this question. um, or to this point. I didn't know that I was being emotionally abused until I went to teacher training. Before that, a little bit, there definitely was inklings. Is that the word? Is that how you say that word? Inklings. There was definitely signs, but I missed them all, or I explained them away, or I would defend. I defended them till I was blue in the face several times. I did complain about them. If you were like my close friends, you probably know. Or, I mean, honestly, back then, I trauma dumped a lot. And I was not really I was not in an very good emotional place. So I was very, um, my whole world was trying to survive the stuff I was going through and trying to just survive day to day emotionally. Um, so if you knew me then, I'm different now. But I did what I could then. Like, I did my very best. I did more than my very best. I gave it everything I had. Thank fucking God, because it got me here. But anyway, went to teacher training. And in this teacher training, I, for the very first time, was in an environment where people were really loving and supportive. And I mean, it's a big group. There's always some shit that happens, but in general, for most, basically everybody, everyone was really loving and supportive of each other, like an unconditional love. Their like support of you wasn't based on anything needing to happen. It wasn't like, what's the word I'm looking for? There wasn't like a clause, like, oh, but if you do this, then you don't get any more. It was just like, it was just there. And I was really fucking uncomfortable with it. I mean, it wasn't as obvious outwardly, but like, or maybe it was. Maybe I'm not as good at hiding it as I think, but I was really uncomfortable with it. And one day after class, like a movement class, I was laying on my mat at the end of class, and I was like, it just finally hit me. And again, there were signs and there was conversations and there was lead up, but kind of actually, everything actually clicked. And that was really hard. And I clicked kind of, it was almost like, I kind of explain it like if you um, are wearing some sort of glasses that like obstruct your view, whether they have really big frames or they're those ones that have like the stripes across or whatever, where you can't see the whole, you can't see everything in front of you. It was like I suddenly realized where I was wearing those and I took them off. And I was suddenly saw like, oh fuck, this isn't normal. This isn't how, you know, daughters or kids are often treated. This isn't what love looks like. And I cried there for a long time. And I know, felt like I broke apart in a million pieces. And I, even then, and when I got back to like back home, I was living there with them, like living at home with them. I really fully believed that we could make it work. And I don't know if I went through the phases of like thinking, oh, maybe it's me, maybe I'm not um doing enough, or maybe I'm not whatever enough. Um, I was the main one who, really the only one I think, as far as I know, who consistently went to therapy. I don't remember if I had it's my current therapist that I had around this time. I think it was maybe around this time or before this time. Anyway, I was in a really bad emotional place. Um, I was taking therapy and I was just like doing everything I could to try to make it better. And I was like, there's this like hope in my heart. Maybe because I grew up with Disney movies that always have a happy ending, and I thought that it would be okay. I thought that I was wrong. I thought that maybe that, we could figure it out. But I was I felt so unsafe to use my voice and to talk about feelings. Um, I was in a place where I was, we'd sit at dinner and I'd be interrupted 10 times in less than an hour, and no one would, ask me what I was saying on a regular basis. Like all these different ways of not being listened to or being communicated to, that my voice didn't matter. If I brought up, a concern about like one particular argument, um, it would always be that I'm dramatic and I'm wrong. It was never like my feelings were, I felt like my feelings were never heard. They were always invalidated. I often called things like selfish or self-absorbed or um there's a lot more to the abuse. I'm not going to go into it right now, but basically I was taught that my voice and my feelings didn't matter, and that everybody around me, all of my friends, everyone around me knew that I was full of shit all the time. That's, what I was basically taught. Um, and I'm going to take a breath for a second. Thank you for taking a breath with me. I kind of tested the waters a little bit. I tried to talk about other things, like in an argument, or after an argument, or if something had happened, whatever. I won't go into examples because I can't really think of any but a couple, but they seem like a weird one to bring up. um, None of those went well. None of them went well. And um, I had to have like a minor surgery to have a sister moved from my ovary. And it meant that myself and my parent were spending a little more time together for a while, because were helping to take care of me, which was amazing. And they always were like, anyway, nope, we're not going to go down that pathway right now. Um, Spending more time with them, like one-on-one, it always felt a little bit easier to connect with them one-on-one. Like maybe they'd actually hear me or we'd actually connect in some way. Usually not with emotional things, because I kind of stopped talking about emotional things for obvious reasons. But um, it basically got to a point where I felt like it was like a whole year later where it finally felt like a safe enough time to do it. And it wasn't a plot, it wasn't a scheme. It just was like the last option left and the only other thing. The way that it happened with me was in a blog, which is a source of um, confusion, I suppose. I had a mental health blog, and I didn't name names in that. Talked about my story, my perspectives. I was very, very, very compassionate in that blog, like way more than they deserved after everything that how I was treated. And I know that there's some thought about that. And to that, I'm just going to say that that was the last option left. It wasn't safe for me to have a conversation in person at all. It wasn't safe. And I knew if I tried, I would never get out. I would never get out. It never would have changed. And if it never changed, I wouldn't have survived because I was fucking miserable. I spent my whole life with them, feeling like I did not deserve to be unconditionally loved. I didn't deserve love. And I spent all of that time trying to find it wherever else I could, which is why in some cases I would trauma dump because I didn't know better. Not that I'm saying it's okay, but I didn't know better. And that's, I was like, oh, maybe I can be close with this person and maybe that's how we do that. I didn't have really many skills with this stuff. I was practicing and trying, but you can't heal from abuse that you're in the middle of, right? You can't heal a broken leg while it's being broken. So I wasn't my best self necessarily then, but actually I was my best self for that point. I did the very best I could, and that was the only option I had left. Really, that was the only option. I tried other ways. It was not safe for me. Um, but no, I did not have an evil plot. All of this also kind of brings me to another part of it is that it was not an easy decision. It wasn't a decision I took joy in. It wasn't something that was like small or whatever. It was the hardest decision I've ever had to make. It was the hardest thing I've ever been through. One of the hardest things I've ever been through. Um, and it was also the best thing I've ever done for myself. I wouldn't be alive today if I hadn't done it, if I hadn't ended the abuse. I would not be where I am. I would not be in a relationship where I am unconditionally loved. I wouldn't have my business. I wouldn't, I would not be here fully. 100% would not be here if I hadn't done that. Um, and now I feel myself for the very first time because I was never allowed to be myself with them. It was never safe. It was never safe to use my voice. It was never safe to exist with them in the picture. Um, but it was not easy. And I think some people don't get like one thing that I hear often is people are like, oh, but like they're your mom, they're your sister, they're your brother, they're your uncle, like whatever, they love you. Um, and I know that in some of those cases, people who are saying those things are saying them because their relationship with their mother or their brother, their sister, their uncle, whoever is a great one and it's loving and they have unconditional love. And I love that. I'm so glad for that. Um, but I don't, or I didn't. I didn't have unconditional love. It wasn't safe for me. Um, it wasn't okay. And I also want to bring up the point that just because someone is blood related to you, whether they're your twin, they gave birth to you, they fathered you, you're related to your mom, like however they're related to you, does not give them the right to abuse you, whatever kind of abuse it is. Emotional abuse is abuse. Um, it is, period. It is. And it is just as serious as other forms of abuse. And it's really fucking difficult to heal from. Often physical abuse, I believe, will have emotional abuse parts of it, and the emotional takes a long time to heal from. It's a fucking journey. Um, so those are the main points I wanted to make sure we talked about, is that I didn't have a plot, I didn't have a scheme, and neither did whoever else that you know probably who's estranged. Like it wasn't a scheme. It was probably the last option. I mean, I don't know everybody, obviously. Maybe some people do have schemes, but I feel like we often actually, I think that this is changing a little bit. I mean, maybe it's just a side of TikTok I'm on, but I feel like the narrative is in a lot of cases like that in a situation where a parent and a child are estranged, it's very much like, um, did the parent listen to the child? Did the parent want to listen to them and repair things? Or did they want to hold on to their own narrative so strongly that they were okay to lose their kid? Um, when I started this, I gave what I asked for was space. And it was something that I talked about for, a week or so with my therapist. Um, and he had said it's a healthy thing and it's an okay thing to do in any relationship, is to ask for space. And that's what I did. I asked for space after I put out that post, and they did not respect that at all. They're both very fucking rude, very, very, very rude. And I ended up having to block them. And what I was hoping would happen is they could, I actually thought they would want to have a loving, open conversation. I was still a little bit delusional because, I mean, you have to be a little delusional in order to survive close quarters with anyone who's abusive or narcissistic or whatever. Um, and I was pretty heartbroken when that didn't happen. And it does still, in the back of my mind, a small part of me does still have that come up sometimes, especially around the anniversaries where like maybe it was like a little kid part or whatever, but like I did believe that they would like 100% at some points did believe that they would um hear me or want to repair. Um and I did, they I mean, I wouldn't say they tried. They tried to force a reparation that didn't feel safe for me, and I, made it clear that my boundaries. And then the response was very sharp. um, but there was never like finding a middle ground. So it is still hard. It does still feel hard. It's really fucking difficult. It's difficult to lose anybody, but it's really a different type of grief to lose someone because they chose to lose you. It's a decision they made. And it's such a difficult one when there are people who are supposed to love you unconditionally but can't. Um, yeah, it's it's rough. And I I guess one other thing I'll say here is that sometimes, if I don't talk about this very much now, but one thing that has come up previously is like, oh, why don't you just talk to them again? And I don't, because I guess going back to that very like my fundamental right to be safe. They're not safe people for me. They're not safe people. And I don't deserve to be treated like dirt. I don't deserve, no, you don't either. Like, you don't have to let someone back in your life just because of they're related or they're sick or they're, I don't know, just giving you money. Your safety is important. And if they're not willing to have a conversation with you that feels safe, then, you know, those would be my terms. That there's some form of understanding or ability to meet me halfway where they could acknowledge the shit that they fucked up. Because this is the thing. Everybody fucks up. You can do your very best to be the best parent you can, and you will also fuck some stuff up. And that's okay. And I hope that if you are parents, that you know, like that one day if your kids come to you and say like, hey, I want to talk to you about some things that happened when I was a kid that really fucked me up, that you will listen and you will love them and you will tell them that you're sorry and you will tell them they deserved better and that you will try to make it better and you will listen to them now and you'll learn from them because you're not perfect. And that's okay. You don't have to be. You just have to do your best to treat the people around you, your kids, stepkids, nieces, nephews, friends, like they're humans with feelings and that they're humans who want safety. I know this is a hard topic and I kind of took a different approach to it than I expected to. Not a wrong one, just a little bit of a different one. I talked about this a bit on Instagram yesterday, and in it I talked more kind of towards the perspective of talking to someone who has not been in this situation. And I think some of this stuff has been very much like if you are in a situation like this or you're someone close to someone who does. Um, and I'm just gonna, just in case you're listening and you have, because I have had this come up as well, where people have asked me, where they're like friends are going through this, or they're whoever they know is going through this, and they don't know what to do to be supportive. Here's a couple of like really quick tips. First is just believe them. They've probably been gaslit their entire lives, and the version they're telling you is probably not even the full version. They're probably telling you the small, like light story. They might even have forgotten some of the serious stuff, but believe them. People don't make shit up like this for no reason. Um, don't say, oh, but like just call them. They're your mom, they're your sister, they're your brother, they're your uncle. They'll understand. You don't know that. They probably don't. Um, how abusers, narcissists, whoever act in public or with other people is different than the way they act towards people they abuse. So this person might be the most charming person you've ever met. That does not change how they might act behind closed doors. Um, you might even just, it kind of depends on the person, but you might even just put it out there that like, if this friend, if you have a couch or there's someone that you feel comfortable staying over, like if they're living in the situation, like I have a couch for you if you need it, or let's go for coffee, or like get them out of the house, out of the situation if you can, if they're comfortable with it. Because sometimes just being able to leave, like if you see the situation, you know they're not going to be able to hear, like you can't convince someone of the shit that they're going through. They have to take their time to see it. But if you can like just remind them that you're there when they need you, like or like get them out of the house, have a coffee with them, go for a walk, um like invite them for a sleepover so that they have a safe space to exist. Because just having it there, whether or not they use it, just knowing that it's there, such a massive deal. Like huge, huge, huge deal. It helps so much. And there was a couple people that did this for me that it probably changed the whole game for me. Like I didn't really use it that much, but just knowing that it was there, so comforting. It's like, because you're basically, when you're having to do this, whether it's someone who you're in a relationship with intimately, or it's like a close friend or close family member, having to cut ties is like you're throwing yourself out to sea without a boat, without a life jacket. You're like taking the foundation out of the building. Like they're your foundation support system, and you have to cut all ties with it. And it's so incredibly unsafe feeling, and it's so difficult. Um, just letting them know that you're there, that there's a space for them, taking them for coffee is like throwing them a floaty or a noodle, pool noodle. I mean, not like not like spaghetti. I mean, maybe that's helpful for them. Depends on the person, but um it's like supportive. It's helpful. They'll use it if they need it, if they feel safe, but just knowing it's there will be helpful. I feel like I could talk about this way more than I thought, but I would like to throw it out to you if you have questions. No matter like what, how do I say this? If it's something that feels a little bit difficult to ask, whether it's like, oh, this might be rude to ask, or maybe you're embarrassed or feel shy to ask, send them my way. It's info@movewithbilly.com. I will answer them in an anonymous way, so I won't out you if you're in a situation that is unsafe. I won't leave any personal details unless you specifically ask me to. And I would be happy to answer any questions. I'm not like the expert, like the world's leading expert on this. I am someone who's been through it and can understand it in kind of a different way than maybe some other folks that can who haven't been through it. Um, and I just want anyone who's out there who's been through this or who is going through this to know that I get it. It's so fucking hard. The first, like going through it in the first and second years of the holidays and milestone birthdays, milestones in your life, um, times where you like can't remember how to cook something and you would call someone or you listen to a song they like, those moments fucking suck. And it sucks if it's someone who you've lost who's passed away in your life. It sucks in a different way if it's someone who's chosen to leave your life. And I will just phrase it that way. If you are a survivor of abuse and your parameters for um, the relationship continuing were like your safety, maybe someone else being there, going to therapy, being able to apologize, like those are all things that are like particularly asking someone to apologize and hear you out. Those are not unreasonable things to ask for, nor is it unreasonable to ask for a third party to be there if it makes you feel safe or to go to therapy. None of those are unreasonable asks. And if they're not willing to meet them, they chose that. You didn't choose it. You said, hey, yes, I'd like to continue this relationship. This is how we do it. This is how I feel safe to do it. These are the steps to keep me in your life. These are the steps to strengthen our relationship and heal. And if they don't do any of them, they've made that decision. Um, I also feel like it's important to just put out there that like I and most people who I know who've been through similar things never one time asked anyone to choose a side. I mean, I haven't met everyone who's had to do this, but I never asked anyone to choose a side. What I did do is ask people not to share personal information, particularly when the situation was elevated for me and it became even more unsafe feeling because stuff happened I won't go into. Um, that's when I asked people to just not share personal information of like where I am, where I'm working kind of thing. And with my very, very close friends, after like 2 or 3 years, if they were still, had them on Instagram or Facebook and weren't talking to them, I asked them to delete them. Um, or not post anything about me. But um again, I didn't set any boundaries like that for years. I did just say, I mean, at the beginning I said like don't share personal information. Because who the fuck knows what's gonna happen. But that is another thing I guess I should have included. Like don't if you know someone going through this, don't like call their person they're saying was abusive and just like tell them everything going on. Don't do it. Like their safety is really important right now, particularly because they're probably the most or no, the least safe they've ever felt in their entire life. They probably feel very fucking in danger. Respect their safety. Don't share personal information. Um, that's everything I think. So reach out for real. Reach out if you have questions. Um, if you are interested in working with me one-on-one, if honestly, I've had some people who've done one-on-ones who've like wanted to devote a little bit of time to some of their sessions to talk through this stuff, to process it with someone who understands what this is like. I'm not a therapist, I'm not a trained therapist, but if you're just wanting to work with a coach who we can do movement and pick apart diet culture, but you also would like a place to process that this like bullshit you're going through, I can be that. I can do that with you if you want. um, all the links for all those events and stuff will be in the show notes. If you have feedback, if you want to be a guest, doesn't have to be about this topic, about any topic, send me an email. And if you want to support this podcast and the work I do, buy me a coffee or slash leave me a tip. The link is in the show notes. It helps me tremendously. You can set it up so that you send me a $2 tip every single month, which would be fucking fantastic. Helps me do this work, helps me to continue doing this work and continue doing this free content for you. Have a fantastic day. Talk to you soon. Bye.